As the curtains come down on Narendra Modi's closely followed visit to the United States, the Indian Prime Minister and the US President have set Indo-US ties on a higher plane, pledging to push bilateral relationship to new levels. President Obama and Prime Minister Modi discussed a range of issues, including cooperation to fight terrorism, while also backing a rules-based global order in which India would assume greater multilateral responsibility, economic and defense cooperation, trade and investment, easier travel access between the two countries, some of the key issues which were discussed. Here's a quick snippet of what both the leaders had to say.
We have so much in common. It is critical for us to continue to deepen and broaden the existing framework of partnership and friendship that already exists.
मैंने प्रेसिडेंट ओबामा से आग्रह किया है कि वह ऐसे कदम उठाएं जिससे भारत की सर्विस कंपनियां यूएस की मार्केट को आसानी से एक्सेस कर सकें। साझा हितों को ध्यान में रखकर हम अपनी सिक्योरिटी डायलॉग और डिफेंस रिलेशंस को और आगे बढ़ाएंगे। मैं यूएस डिफेंस कंपनीज को विशेषकर भारत की डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कैपेसिटीज के विकास में भाग लेने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं।
Bloomberg News' Show Chandra joins us from Washington with some of the key highlights of Modi's last day in Washington. Show, let's start by talking about yesterday. We've seen quite a bit, whether it was the Madison Square Garden talk or, whether he was those dinner meetings that he held with captains of Indian industry. But yesterday was the key day that we're all watching out for in terms of those bilateral talks, wasn't it?
In terms of reiterating the areas of interest, there was the usual gamut: trade, cooperation on economic issues. Then the big area that a lot of people focused on was defense and security and energy, especially renewable energy, clean energy. We had the two sides issue a joint statement about these things, and there was a lot of emphasis placed on containing terrorism, which is a concern both for the U.S. and for India. So the two leaders talked a lot about that. Again, it was more about here's what we plan to accomplish together. Here's how we can do it. We are both committed, but no significant billion-dollar investments or deals announced on either side. Again, it's a good and a bad thing. When you talk to business leaders, he sent a very strong message. He reiterated that India is indeed looking for foreign investment. They're open for business. They don't want the government to be in the way. He wants to reduce bureaucracy. And that message seems to have resonated. I spoke with the CEO of McGraw-Hill Financial, Douglas Peterson, on my way back here, and he said he summed it up very well. He said Prime Minister Modi's visit was an incredibly comprehensive one. He talked about the focus on jobs, on growth, and who in both countries wouldn't care about those things. So he said Prime Minister Modi went beyond political platitudes, and I think investors here are interested in that.
Comprehensive meeting indeed to discuss what this means for Indo-US ties going forward, what and how it will benefit both Indian and American companies. I'm being joined by Parag Saxena of New Silk Route Growth Capital, Ashishkumar Chauhan, the MD and CEO of BSE, senior journalist Prem Shankar and Rajrishi Singhal from Gateway House. But Rajrishi, I want to start with you. We saw a joint editorial which had been written by both President Obama and Prime Minister Modi, where they said that the full potential of the talks had yet to be realized. This, of course, came out before those bilateral talks. So would you say that we've, moved one step closer at least now?
Oh, definitely, of course. The dinner, which was quasi-formal, so to speak, because the First Lady wasn't present at the dinner, and the subsequent bilateral meetings, I think are just the first steps in a courtship. So I don't think both have asked each other out for a dance as yet, but they're getting closer. They're wanting to measure up each other. And I think that's been done pretty effectively. So I think over the next 2 years, which is the term remaining for President Obama, and Mr. Modi's invite to Obama to come and visit India. I think all of those will now take shape, they'll be filled up, it'll be fleshed out. And it's a good start, I would say, because so an informal dinner followed by bilateral level official talks with White House officials present, Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Mr. Kerry, and various other officials. So they're comprehensive indeed, because they talked about defense, they talked about security, they talked about counterterrorism, they talked about economic ties. So I guess it was a wide range of issues.
So everything had been touched upon in some sense.
I guess so. So it's like the first, you reached first base. Now you've got to hit home run and make it all the way back.
Parag, would you also say that it's been a good start? If you had one key takeaway from all the meetings that we've seen so far, what would that be?
I think the big takeaways are that he's very focused on what he wants to try and achieve, and he's excellent at communicating that message.
Okay, Prem, I want to come to you, and I want to talk to you about the civil nuclear deal that we've seen. We've heard comments coming out from President Obama, who has said that, of course, India meeting all the requirements and therefore being added to the nuclear suppliers group. What's your own reading from that?
Well, the fact that we've been added to this, there's a reiteration that we have been added to the list of cleared countries by the nuclear suppliers group is always welcome. It needed to be said. The important thing is, today we are not being able to convert that agreement into anything on the ground because of the nuclear liability clause. And here I think that the Indian government and Mr. Modi will have been, it has been pressed on him, I'm sure, that the position that India has taken is excessively strong, and that it is not merely stopping American companies from coming into India. There's not a single company apart from the Russians who have come in. The Russians were already here, and that's because there is something that is much too tough in this, which is not present in agreements of these companies and other countries. And I think that this is something that India must set right. In the past, it wasn't done because it was considered to be some kind of an issue of a climb down to America, putting Indian people at risk. I think that we have to really get away from this purely defensive mindset. We haven't had that. Apart from that, I think that this meeting has been good on atmospherics and getting to know each other, but there has been very little concrete that's come out of it.
Interesting. I'm going to come to that in just a bit, but Mr. Chauhan, I want to bring you in at this point. Prime Minister Modi is showing his seriousness as far as the ease of doing business goes. We heard those comments coming out when that whole Make in India campaign was rolled out. But do you think that perception has started changing? What are the one or two crucial things that the government should do to sort of, show its seriousness?
I think there are basically 2 or 3 points. Some of them he touched upon during his visit. One was the visa on arrival for US citizens. I think it's basically telling the US, especially US businessmen, that we are open for business. US may be tough on Indians for the visa conditions, but India welcomes the US entrepreneurs and create job. So that is one aspect which I think he has done brilliantly in the Madison Square Garden speech, that at the end he took out a paper and it said, I am now announcing this for PIOs and OCIs, but they are more Indian in origin. But he said this is going to be for the entire US citizenry, and I think that's a brilliant move that will attract a lot of different types of businesses which we have not yet attracted. Second thing he talked about was that he would remove one law a day. And sort of antiquated laws that need to be removed, because the red tape and the red carpet part is basically about our laws and how we implement the laws, and he's trying to actually reduce or remove or sort of take away the laws which are antiquated, and that is going to be another huge sort of surplus, huge plus for Americans to come in India. And third is the tax part of it, that many of the American leaders, the business leaders, have talked to him on saying that we need a stable tax structure, not doing retrospective taxes, and also a reasonably progressive tax framework, which he has promised to them. So I think these three, if we are able to implement in a short time, I see a lot of sort of investment interest that is coming. And what, in some sense, what he has done, He has worked on government-to-government relationships with China, with Japan, and now with US. He has also tried to bring FDI, that is, large corporates should invest in India. And third thing, which we are working on, is basically private investments. How do we bring that $40 trillion of investable wealth, which is moving around, searching for avenues to invest? How do we bring them onto the Indian markets? And that's what our, basically my own perspective over last 7-8 days has been, that I have been trying to meet various investors. We have met totally more than 1,000 investors over last 8-10 days in different conferences. And there seems to be a huge appreciation of what is happening in India today.
Mr. Jha, I want to talk to you about the Defence Cooperation Pact, which has been extended, we understand, for another 10 years. Do you think this is going to be enough for American companies to come and invest in India? Because, you know, when we saw FDI and defence opening up, most foreign companies had said that there was not enough for them to sort of induce them to come and set up manufacturing here.
Well, actually, the problem is precisely there, because the defense cooperation is not simply saying, this is a piece of equipment I want, and previously we were buying it, please come and do it in India. There are many stages of cooperation. First of all, in defense, the country concerned, India, needs to identify precisely what it needs in terms of its defense, and this is called a sort of a quality requirement, you know, by the army. After that, there is the question of two stages. One is learning how to make things, and the other is just getting blueprints and reproducing those products in India. The learning part is where the cooperation is really important. And the middle, the know-how rather than the know-why. And to transfer that, you actually need a level of sophistication in your defense industries within India already, you know, for them to be able to do it and to interact successfully on this. And this doesn't exist in many companies, and where it had existed in public sector companies, it has been run down very badly in the last 10 years. More than 10 years, in fact, it's not just 10 years.
Okay,
and I think that we have to do our homework before we are ready for the defense cooperation to really yield results.
So Rajrishi, do you think that we've done enough homework? I mean, on one hand, we've agreed in principle to extend the cooperation, but on the other, do you think there's going to be sufficient interest on the ground?
Well, you know, you know, it's a dangerous path that Mr. Modi now has chosen to walk, because he has promised a lot, and he has to deliver. And this is now, the clock starts ticking now for him to deliver on land acquisition, which will involve repealing laws, going to the states, you know, bringing various authorities together, simplifying it, taxation laws, red tape, GST. So there is a lot that needs to be done, and he has to deliver. So I think he has made all the right noises, he has met all the right people, and they're now waiting to see. So just by promising, I don't think he's going to get those investments. I think they are eager to invest in India, because India is a huge market. But they need that comfort, they need that stability. And I think from initial signs, they are a little nervous, because nothing has happened on retrospective taxation. And the BJP also has rolled back one you know, law that was passed by a previous government, which is allowing FDI into retail. That was a law that was passed by Parliament, of which BJP was also a part. And now that they have rolled it back, so there is a bit of nervousness, and I think Mr. Modi and his party members will have to show that they mean business, that they mean to deliver on their promises, and I think it's time now. So he's going to be very carefully watched.
For them to actually step up and start acting on their
everybody
words.
will be watching them very, very closely.
Parag, you know, so one bit of it is, of course, trade, but there's also the strategic partnership or the strategic relationship between India and the US. Does the political situation in Pakistan, according to you, make the case for a strong India and strong India-US relations even stronger?
I think that, you know, there is a lot of hope that the US and India will find in each other, that comment about natural allies will actually become in fact. I suspect that that takes a little bit of time to build that trust, and it won't happen in a single visit. This is a great start, but it will probably take some time before that notion of allies takes on a greater tie.
Mr. Jha, I want to start with you and talk to you about, the kind of body language that we saw between Obama and Modi. They did that whole impromptu visit to the memorial of Martin Luther King. Would you say that that really was crucial to set the base for the relationship going forward?
The body language was certainly positive. But once again, I must emphasize that A, I'm not an expert on body language. B, and I think far too much is being made of this. I've watched prime ministerial visits for 50 years, and I've been part of prime ministerial delegations for 1 year. And every time the question of body language has come up, and nothing concrete has come out of that. What is important is for leaders of big countries which have potential issues as well as potential opportunities for cooperation to be able to know each other. That has happened. And Mr. Modi has done it in a very positive way, for which he must be given the full credit. But also he has stuck to his positions, in India's positions, in a way that I find admirable. The question of whether India should take part in the attack, the war on ISIS. This question has been discussed, but India has a clear position on it, and I'm absolutely sure that Mr. Modi has reiterated that, because it seems so from some of the reports of their meeting. I think that these are very good things. You know who you're dealing with, you know what you can get from them, and you can look for that non-zero sum, kind of arrangement or agreement from which both countries can benefit. And that's what's happened now.
Rajrishi, then quick last comments from you as well. The reason I'm talking about body language is it comes at a time when Prime Minister Modi till recently was not even being allowed to the US. Then you're seeing trade which has stagnated with the US for the last 4 years. What are you reading into the kind of chemistry you've seen between the two of them?
Well, if you see the joint statement and the press conference that they held yesterday, the difference is very palpable. So while President Obama dwelt on counterterrorism, dwelt on security, dwelt on maritime security, Prime Minister Modi was much more transactional. He spoke about WTO, he spoke about pharma, IPR, he spoke about visas for software professionals. So very clearly, the two sides are still measuring up each other, because Mr. Obama wants help from India. He wants India to participate in this war on terror, to safeguard the maritime channels in South China Sea, in the Indian Ocean. He wants Indian cooperation elsewhere. That's what he sees, the potential for India a US relationship. Whilst Mr. Modi sees, he thinks US should deliver on trade, on business, on investment, on WTO, for instance, where I think US has played a bit of a duplicitous role by blaming India for blocking TFA, Trade Facilitation Agreement, while not acknowledging that it has been jeopardizing India's claims for food security. So I think there is a bit of shadow boxing going on here, and as my co-panelist Mr. Jha said, I think it's a bit too early to judge from the body language. So both use this opportunity to know each other, to gauge each other, and I think Mr. Modi's reputation precedes him, so you can see that in Mr. Obama's body language somewhat.